blame that on black Americans. You just can't. You know what I mean? Thanks to the one person that said it.
So it wasn't just you, Eric. It clearly didn't resonate with the audience either.
Right. The audience was laughing to that point, and then there was kind of this uncomfortable silence, as you could hear. Ultimately, I sort of feel like we're seeing anti-Semitic attacks and hate speech rise, and it's important for performers to talk as clearly as possible about these issues. One of the things that Chappelle does is he'll talk about something, and then he'll say something that's sort of contrary. It's hard to get a full read on exactly what he's trying to say, and that's exactly what we don't need in a moment like this.
And you said that in your column, and your inbox and your social media feeds got flooded with sharp and kind of violent reactions. Quickly tell us about that.
Yeah, people seem to equate my criticizing Dave Chappelle with me somehow siding with white Jewish people against a popular black comedian. And people implied that, I wasn't really a black person. I was called an Uncle Tom. I was called a Sambo. Some people use the N-word. It was a barrage, and that kind of stuff can be traumatizing, and it's just unfortunate because I feel like, number one, it's an attempt to intimidate somebody into not saying a contrary opinion. But Dave Chappelle himself at the end of his monologue said that it's a scary time to talk about controversial issues, and that's something that troubles him. So I think it's kind of bizarre that his fans are creating this kind of toxic barrage of insults that is exactly what Dave Chappelle himself has criticized.
We have a clip of that. Let's take a little listen.
It shouldn't be this scary to talk about anything. It's making my job incredibly difficult. To be honest with you, I'm getting sick of talking to a crowd like this. I love you to death, and I thank you for your support, and I hope they don't take anything away from me. Whoever they are.
Okay, so he kind of makes your point for you right there, Eric, but I just want to end with this question. Where do you think all of this, his monologue, your critique, the vitriolic responses, where does this put us in terms of being able to have conversations about issues like racism and anti-Semitism?
Well, I think what it shows is that if you're going to have these conversations, they have to be in an environment where everybody respects each other, and they have to be clear-cut and direct. Again, I think the problem with Dave Chappelle's monologue is that it was tough to figure out exactly what he was saying. I think he did that on purpose so that his fans could defend him and say he wasn't minimizing anti-Semitism, although there were many points in that monologue where he seemed to be doing exactly that, and there were Jewish people who heard that monologue and were very disappointed by it. And my critique basically said that. I was disappointed. I didn't call him an anti-Semite. I didn't even say he wasn't funny. And his fans reacted with such vitriol that it makes it hard to talk about anything, and you feel as if you're going to get attacked if you even offer a tiny bit of criticism. And we'll never move forward on these issues in a situation like that.
Well, Eric, we hope it doesn't silence you. We appreciate your commentaries and criticisms. Thank you so much for joining us.
It won't, and thank you so much.
Eric Deggans is NPR's TV critic. Here and Now is a production of NPR and WBUR. I'm Deepa Fernandez in Alameda, California.
I'm Robin Young in Boston. This is Here Now.
Funding for Here and Now comes from the listeners of WBUR Boston and from BetterHelp, connecting people with a therapist online for issues like depression and relationships. 25,000 therapists are available through BetterHelp using a computer or smartphone. BetterHelp.com/public.
This week in This American Life, one of our producers here at the show, Susan Burton, recently revealed a secret that she had kept to herself for decades from everybody in her life. And I do mean everybody. Nobody knew at all. Not her family, not a single friend, nobody. I got her thinking about secrets. Why we finally tell them, if we do finally tell them.
The November 21st, 2022 Roanoke City Council meeting at 2 p.m. is hereby called to order. And I will ask our clerk, Ms. Stephanie Moon Reynolds. Excuse me. I just got through talking to Ms. Susie McCoy.
Thank you.
To please call the roll.
All right. Ms. Sanchez Jones. Here. Vice Mayor White Boyd. Here. Mr. Bestfitch.
Sorry, Trent.
Okay, he's here, but not present. Mr. Cobb. Here. Ms. Moon Reynolds. Here. Ms. Price. Here. And Mayor Lee.
Here. And the quorum is present. Mr. Bestfitch has to step out to make a phone call. He'll be right back. All right. Today, our invocation will be delivered by the Reverend Elizabeth Link. Is she? Okay, all right. And who is the pastor of Second Presbyterian Church. And following the invocation, I will lead you in the Pledge of Allegiance. So thank you, Pastor Link. To the podium, please.
Let us join our hearts in prayer. Holy One, we gather today mindful of your many gifts, for a city with good and generous people, for a country seeking freedom and truth, for a system of government that seeks to look out not for the powerful, but for the common man, woman, person. We gather today learning, yearning to be and do what is right and what is good in your eyes. We pray, Lord, that you would shine your light and look with favor upon our city. Guide our city council members, sustain them in their work, support them in their anxieties, and strengthen them in their resolve to seek and pursue the well-being of all people. Grant them your wisdom. Bless their business and work together with patience, compassion, and understanding. Grant to them the strength to discern and carry forth your will. May you instruct us in our daily walk, Lord, to bless this place, Roanoke, we call home. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you and welcome to everybody for the first of our two council sessions today. And thank you, Pastor. Thank you so much. All right. Following our agenda today, right now we're on item number 2, which is presentations and acknowledgments. There are none. And I also want to state that council meetings will be televised live and replayed on RVTV Channel 3 on Thursdays at 7 o'clock p.m. and Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. and video stream through Facebook Live at facebook.com/RoanokeVA. And council meetings are offered with closed captioning for the deaf and or hard of hearing. All right, we have no presentations and acknowledgments this afternoon. So I'll go to item number 3, which is the hearing of citizens upon public matters. And City Council sets this time aside as a priority for citizens to be heard. And all matters will be referred to the city manager for a response, recommendation, or report to council as he may deem appropriate. Madam Clerk, do we have any citizens signed up to speak?
Yes, sir, we do. We have 3 citizens.
Okay. If you would call them in the order that they signed up.
Sure.
Oh, please.
Frida Cathcart.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I appreciate this opportunity to address you today. I first wanted to start out by saying how grateful I am that my husband's procedure went well on Friday. I know some of you were aware of that, so that's why I'm here today with a smile on my face.
All right.
So back in August, I gave a presentation before City Council about the theme of floodplains and the risk of development upstream and the strain it puts on the tributaries that can lead to flooding downstream. I wanted to bring that up today to remind you about that presentation because tonight there's going to be a public hearing about a development in Fishburne Park. And this development in Fishburne Park, when I read the contract, talked about not allowing the proposed coffee shop to use the current parking lot in Fishburne Park, but it would have to create its own access and parking. That would create more storm runoff and potential, well, it would lead to more flooding downstream. And where that house is positioned, it's at a high point of Fishburne Park, and where it drains is to, well, two ways, because it's at the top, right? There's one way and the other way. They both end up in Murray Run. And I apologize, I haven't sent this before, but I'm going to send it to you this afternoon. It's been kind of a busy time in my life, juggling everything. But I'm going to send to you a video that I filmed a little over a week ago when Hurricane Nicole went through, of a neighbor on Brandon Avenue near Towers Mall. I was mostly going there to see what it looked like with a rainfall because of the potential development on Brandon Avenue. But it still goes to the same place, putting more strain on that. And that neighbor is already being, well, you'll see from the video, it's about a minute long, his yard being flooded and his worries about his property and his house and his reality and worried about what happens when they develop upstream, if he's going to be able to stay there any longer, and his worries about that. So this proposed development in Fishburne Park would add additional storm water runoff to Murray Run that would cause flooding for neighbors downstream. And I think that's really important, especially with the 2020-2040 city vision that talks about protecting our natural resources. And I know in the recent years, Roanoke City Council passed, I think it was a climate crisis resolution, some type of acknowledgement that things are changing. And you know, it's hard to respond to change sometimes when you don't know what that change is going to be. When you get these 6 inches of dump in like Central Park that floods apartments and buildings that they never saw coming, or Eastern Kentucky, that they just have these bursts of rain that comes, and how we can respond as a community and a locality to protect that. And I didn't say this earlier, but I'm speaking at this moment advocating for my constituents as a soil and water conservation director. This is the type of work that we do, is looking at how can we do flood prevention. The districts were originally created in response to the Dust Bowl back in the 1920s and 30s. And then with that was with flood prevention. So I just wanted to bring this important aspect to your attention as you hear the public, have the public hearing and consider potential developments about considering how it's affecting the resiliency of our city to respond to this climate crisis that we all face. And I really encourage you to ask questions any way that I can support you with resources as you make these determinations and evaluations. I'm at your service. I'm here to advocate for my constituents and be of service to you in whatever capacity I can be. And I greatly appreciate this opportunity to address to you today. And it might be a short email that I sent to you, but there'll be a link to that 1-minute video there. And please forgive me for not doing it sooner, but I'll do the best that I can. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Barbara Dirk.
Welcome, Marva.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. Happy Thanksgiving. Thank you. Every day is Thanksgiving. It is. We decide every day if we're going to have a good day or a bad day. And so I vote every day to have a good day. Every day is Thanksgiving Day. What I'd like to address with you today are 4 things. One, I've been reading in the paper about the caretaker's cottage. That actually is where the Blackwell home lived. We call the Geesh House, and I would encourage you to call the caretaker cottage the Blackwell house or Blackwell cottage. 4 generations of Blackwells lived there. I think the cabin or the cottage deserves historic designation. That our history is very important to us. It's important to us to learn from, and I know we're doing a lot of learning about past history, and I think this should be one of those. I like the mission statement of the city, and that's on the top of the agendas that we get. And it says, the city of Roanoke is a safe, caring, and economically vibrant community in which to live, learn, work, play, and prosper. A vibrant center with strong neighborhoods set amongst the spectacular beauty of Virginia's Blue Ridge. I've talked to you several times, multiple times, about the use of vibrant. You've got 2 vibrants in there. And I'd like one of those to be changed to, with your permission, to, with your action to healthy. But what I want to mention today are the strong neighborhoods. And we used to have strong neighborhoods, and they need to be empowered. They need to be enabled. They need equity and empowerment. They need to revitalize the President's Council that used to be very active in our city. And it was the presidents of neighborhood organizations, and we got together and we shared, and that we all have all the neighborhoods have drug problems. All the neighborhoods have crime. It's just that some of it is more camouflaged than others. So I would encourage you that we be, as the mission statement says, neighborhood strong neighborhoods, and that we support the President's Council and we support our neighborhood's voice and decision-making for the city. Happy Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Do y'all need this?
Got it. Our next speaker is David Garland.
Okay. Oh, turn that off. All right. Thank you. Okay, so I don't have prepared remarks this time, but I wanted to speak briefly about the code amendment regarding smoke detectors. I can't be here later in the meeting, so that's why I'm speaking now instead of later. And generally, I favor, and I think it's reasonable to promote a simplicity in the law when possible. That some complexity in the law generally is going to inure to the benefit of those that are closest to the legal and regulatory issues, and frequently becomes a burden for others. And the and so when I looked at this, heard and read about the smoke detector ordinance, my first thought was that it seems like there's an awful lot that already goes on with that, both in the Landlord and Tenant Act, the Rental Certificate Program, which focuses on older housing in the city. The Rental Certificate Program includes that issue in it. The Fire Code, the Building Code, even social services pays attention to smoke detectors when they have issues going on in homes. So there's a lot already going on there. And I wondered to what extent this will really add to that. And my suggestion is going to be to suggest tabling it for further research and consideration. And a few thoughts I have along those lines are, first of all, that there's some aspirational language in here that suggests it's really all about the owner, and that there will be a certain enforcement mechanism. Well, under the criminal code, generally speaking, and I may be wrong about there are exceptions, anyone, a tenant, a landlord, can go seek a summons or a warrant for commission of a crime. So it's not just necessarily in the hands of the fire department. It could be in the hands of landlords if they have a tenant messing with their fire detectors. And at least that's how I would initially read it without, again, I haven't had the benefit of doing a lot of research on this in advance of the meeting. And so one thing I would notice, the language of the statute is generic. It speaks of individuals, persons. It does also refer to owner in a couple of unique spots, but it actually expressly notes in 1235 that maintenance is the responsibility of the tenant in a lot of situations. So this statute does apply to tenants as well. And not only that, by creating a crime, it creates grounds for eviction. So under the Landlord-Tenant Act, it generally there's a general provision about the criminal willful threat to health and safety, which smoke detectors constitutes a non-remedial violation, and landlord can terminate in 15 days. And there is also a 30-day termination provision for repeat offenses. Now, I'm all about allowing people to order their affairs as they wish between landlords and tenants without a lot of regulatory interference, frankly. But I think it's an interesting point about this statute is that it is written universally, but it may have unintended consequences that may not have been fully considered yet. And so yeah, that was one concern. And then, let's see, there is one in 1217, for instance, it refers to any person. Now there's this prefatory language that talks about companies and owners and violations, but again, 1217, which provides for the daily fine, it just says that any person, any responsible party. Well, it's very explicit under 1235 that the tenant's a responsible party as well. Again, there could be unintended consequences of this added complexity in the law, as it turns in motion with other things in the law. And the now one amendment I would suggest, though, for consistency would be in 1236, which does only refer to the owner maintaining records. In all honesty, and it refers to 1234 and 1235. 1235 has a tenant responsibility that's unique to the tenant, not the landlord, as the ongoing occupant. So it seems to me 1236 should read each owner or tenant that's subject to this article. Now that would at least make it consistent under 1236 instead of it just being the owner, because the owner doesn't really have responsibility for whether a tenant disables the smoke detector, and the landlord comes in and sees it's disabled. That seems like it could be a criminal offense under this. So, and maybe it should be. I'm not offering an opinion one way or the other on that. I'm just pointing out that there are some perhaps unforeseen consequences here. And that was pretty much it. Just something to think about as you go forward with considering this later today. All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was the last speaker.
Thank you. That concludes all the citizens signed up to speak. We'll go to item number 4, which is the consent agenda. All matters listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine by members of City Council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussions of the items. If discussion is desired, the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. I want to call your attention to 3 requests for closed meetings. One from the mayor requesting that council convene in a closed meeting to discuss the 2022 Citizen of the Year Award pursuant to Section 2.2-3711 Code of Virginia as amended. There is a request from the Vice Mayor, Chair of the City Council Personnel Committee, requesting that council convene in a closed meeting to discuss a personnel matter, being the performance of a council-appointed officer, pursuant to Section 2.2-3711 Code of Virginia, as amended. Also, there's another closed meeting from the city, a request from the city manager that we have a closed meeting to discuss a prospective business or industry or the expansion of an existing business or industry in the southeastern area of the city of Roanoke, where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body pursuant to Section 2.2-3711 Code of Virginia as amended. I need a motion.
Move the consent agenda.
Second.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Sanchez Jones.
Aye.
Vice Mayor White Boyd.
Aye.
Mr. Bestfitch.
Aye.
Mr. Cobb.
Aye.
Ms. Moon Reynolds.
Aye.
Ms. Price.
Aye.
And Mayor Lee.
Aye. Thank you for the consent agenda being approved. All right, item number 5 is that we're going into our regular agenda now, and item number 5 is the proposal of the City of Roanoke to amend the Roanoke Charter of 1952. That's an interesting year. It's a great year. Some of y'all get well ahead on that. Okay. To reflect the change in election dates and meetings of council generally. There is one measure that we have to adopt, and that's a resolution.
Move the resolution. Second.
Madam Clerk, can you please read the title paragraph?
A resolution petitioning the General Assembly to amend the Roanoke Charter of 1952 to reflect a change in election dates and meetings of council generally.
All right. I want to recognize our city attorney at this time for any comments that he'd like to have on this matter.
Once again, Mr. Mayor, is housekeeping. This is simply having our charter reflect the way that we elect council members. And I almost want to go through the 7-time All-American city of Roanoke, but I think, but it is, again, housekeeping. This is something we did last year, and we hope that our neighboring Senator Suderline, will see fit to support this charter change as we move forward.
All right, thank you. I'm going to open a public hearing and recognize any citizens that are wishing to be heard. Has anybody signed up, Madam Clerk?
No, sir.
Okay. All right, well, I'll close the public hearing, and are there any comment? There is somebody?
Mayor, I signed up to speak, and I evidently gave the wrong number. So I signed up to speak on number 8, but really it's number 5.
Okay, well, we'll recognize you. Come on up, Madam. Ms. Dirk, and have your say.
Thank you, Mayor. I really do appreciate that, and members of council. And I don't know exactly what you're changing, but I do know that I am Barbara Dirk, and I appreciate Ms. Sanchez-Jones giving me a bottle of water at the polls, and Mr. Cobb helping rectify the issue that we had at William Fleming voting place, that was Peters Creek Precinct. The General Assembly, because we're a Dillon Rule state, gives the city opportunities, the power, the authority to make changes. And during the last election, that ranked choice voting was voted on in Arlington, and they have chosen to put it on as a referendum. And we had so many candidates that were willing to serve on city council last time. I would like for Roanoke City to look at ranked choice voting as a way that we select our members of city council. I have given each of you a card on this. I believe that it allows more choice and more voice to the people. And I am all about empowering the people, not so much the party, but the people. And I want to thank those people that did run for city council this year. And congratulations to the winners. Thank you very much. Look at ranked choice voting as an option for Roanoke City. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, let me close the public hearing.
Oh, yes, sure.
And I'll come back to you, Ms. Besser.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Dirk. All right, are there any more speakers?
No, sir.
Okay, we're going to close the public hearing and now go to comments by members of City Council, and I'm pleased to recognize Mr. Bestbridge.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to suggest that we forward Ms. Dirk's suggestion to the electoral board and get their input on this. I would not think it would be appropriate for City Council to be making changes in that sort of thing without running it through them and getting their advice on what they think would work. So maybe we can just ask the city manager to forward that to the electoral board, and they can come back to us.
I agree.
Come back to you, I should say, not to us.
All right. Thank you. Any other comments by council? All right. I agree with Councilman Bestbridge that I think this should go to the electoral board, and I'll ask if there are any other matters as it relates to that. I'll ask the city manager to forward them to us, but I think the electoral board is the appropriate body to discuss this and then come back to us and we can decide. All right, we've closed the hearing. Comments by City Council, no further comments. I'll ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Ms. Sanchez Jones.
Aye.
Vice Mayor White Boyd.
Aye.
Mr. Bestbridge.
Aye.
Mr. Cobb.
Aye.
Ms. Price.
Aye.
Ms. Moon Reynolds.
Aye.
Mayor Lee.
Aye. And the resolution passes. All right. We'll go to item number 6 is petitions and communications. We have a presentation by the Blue Ridge PBS to share information, sponsored by Council Member Cobb and Council Member Bestbridge, and they've been allotted 10 minutes. So, Blue Ridge, well, welcome.
And I have an accompanying PowerPoint that should be there. I don't know how that works here. You know, I'm only a technical person. So there should be a PowerPoint. Is it here? Uh-huh. Oh, I do see it. The clicker's here. Great. And I'll follow that as best I can.
All right.
Well, good afternoon. I feel like I'm here with friends because I know almost each and every one of you. Before I start, I'll let you know, my name is Will Anderson. I'm the president and CEO here at Blue Ridge PBS. Is this timer going to be working with me here? No. Oh, man, because, you know, Lisa's my producer, and she's going to, like a good producer, she might run in front of you, Mr. Mayor, and give me the wrap-up sign. She'll give me the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'll do my best to see what I can do here. 2:30, got 10 minutes. Here we go. Blue Ridge PBS, we've been here since 1967. And there are 3 different licensees for a public television station. There's a state licensee, there's a university licensee, and then there's a community licensee. We are a community licensee and have been as the PBS system was set up way back in the 1960s. That means we are obligated to serve the community. Now, our community is big at Blue Ridge PBS. We're set to serve 42% of the geographic commonwealth. And that really goes from Lynchburg all the way to Bristol up into the coal fields. But by the way, community means close, right? We are the close community here in Roanoke, this fine, wonderful, beautiful city that I've been lucky enough to be here for over 15 years. You are our community, and my question is, why am I not servicing you the way you want to be served? So I'm here to listen after I've talked for 10 minutes. So each and every one of you are always invited to come to Blue Ridge PBS because I'm here to serve this community, the city of Roanoke. We're on your land. So keep that in mind. So here I go through my presentation. As the CEO of Blue Ridge PBS, I take great pride in our vision, the mission and core values that align with your mission and core values. I appreciate that many of your strategic areas of importance align with our vision, and our vision includes education first and foremost, community safety, human services, infrastructure, good government, livability, and the economy. Now, those are the things that we serve. We want to tell the stories, because I'm never going to tell the bad stuff about our community. And remember, our community is huge, right? But I won't be telling the bad stuff. There's enough people doing that. My job is to tell the good things about our community. Everything good. Now think about that. No fires, no murders, no traffic accidents. I'm going to tell the good things. We made history for broadcast television in 1967. And most of you don't know this. I saw the video and presented it to my board from 1967 of our sign-on. We were the very first all-color public broadcast station in the country. And we're leading the way for digital as well, and I'll tell you about that in just a moment. We're proud of our continued focus on community engagement and education. Blue Ridge PBS is considered the region's storyteller, and our team works very hard to preserve the history of our area, promote tourism, and enhance educational opportunities. In fact, over 200,000 school children and teachers are currently benefiting from our educational programs, the ones we create today and the ones we've created in the past. See, the good thing about what we do, it's and no disrespect to my commercial television colleagues, we're not doing a 3-minute or 30-second bite. We're doing stories that can last well beyond our lifetime. The things that we're creating today will be seen by my grandchildren, and I'm not that old. The things that we do today are seen by your grandchildren, and you're not that old. I know I've seen your grandchild on my channel. Because Kennedy was one of our initiatives during pandemic when we started Chatterbox. You see, kids didn't know what the heck they were going to do during the pandemic. They had no idea. Their life was thrown into turmoil. Now, yours was as well. But theirs was rocked. And we had to figure out quickly how to be a voice for the community through their eyes, through their mouths. And we found some wonderful young people who did just that and won some awards for it. We were the first ones to say Zoom might work as a communication tool across the air and across the ways that kids see they get their information now. Because, you know, you can say you see television, you know, Blue Ridge Public Television, we changed our name to Blue Ridge PBS for, you know, logo reasons, but Blue Ridge Public Television has moved over to Blue Ridge Public Media. Because how many televisions do you have in your house? Count them right now. It's going to be on probably less than 3 on one hand. Yeah, okay. Now, how many communication devices do you have? How many screens do you have? I bet you have 3 right in front of you right now. Look, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I sure do.
You got your watch, you got your phone, you got your laptop, you got an iPad, right? That's where the kids are getting it. They're not watching the television, and I know that. And I learned that during pandemic too. I needed to be there, so we did it. So we're embracing the new technology. I got to make sure I'm on the right slide, people. See, we're going to move forward as we grow, and we're going to continue to do what we do, is be the region storyteller. Now, look at this. We serve 42% of the Commonwealth. We talked about that, 200,000 school children, community engagement's all there. This is all good stuff. This is all good marketing stuff. But see, I need to make the relationship, I need to repair the relationship with you all to make sure that I'm listening to what you want. We've given some wonderful things in our documentaries, and my workforce has gone. When I came here in 2008, we had 35 employees, down from 55 2 years before that. Now we got down to 12 at one point. That becomes a television station that doesn't function. you see. And commercial television stations run with 100 to 130 employees. This station was meant to serve the community and 42% of the geographic commonwealth, but that's hard to do. But let me tell you something, we're growing. Thanks to some appropriations from the Commonwealth. We're creating a new station to serve those areas over there in Southwest. PBS Appalachia comes online June 10th, sorry. June 10th, new station. First, here it is, first all digital television station for PBS in the country. And it's rocking their world. And it's built by Blue Ridge PBS and the innovative people that we have here. So that's what we're doing in that sense. But you know, what are you getting like you've had before? Because you know what you had a wonderful documentary on our beautiful Hotel Roanoke. Some of you were a part of that. Nobody's going to do that, people. Nobody has the time, energy, or money, or funds, and resources to do that, but someone that's dedicated to the area, which we are. And we did Lakeside, and we did Smith Mountain Lake. We have a lake thing. And then we did Mill Mountain, story of Mill Mountain. And that's the story of us. But, here it is, Lisa. You ready? Yes. All right. You, council, are hearing it first because we are going to do the definitive documentary, and the press release goes out next week. But I'm spilling the beans, the definitive documentary on the N&W Railway. I can't understand why that hasn't been done before. But we have one of the best producers on the planet right here, Lisa Fenderson. So she's going to do that. And that'll be coming in 2024. And then we have some talks going on with Virginia Tech to do some wonderful things there. And we're also committed to lifelong learning. And when I say learning, it's not K-12 initially. I mean, you think PBS, you think Sesame Street, you think Mr. Rogers, and we're all good for that. But lifelong learners, we're teaching parents how to teach early childhood. And it's not just parents, we're having to teach grandparents that, how to deal with early childhood education before they get to school. And then Lisa came up with a brilliant idea because I remember having to teach my father how to make the flashing light on the VCR stop saying 12. And she said, there are seniors that need to learn and know how to work technology now. Lisa's working on a full series on Senior Wise, Living Wisely. I've just changed the title of the show. So we're not resting on our laurels, and we're growing. And then it came to something that I thought was real important during pandemic. So you remember way back when, before we had to wear the masks, and we couldn't go anywhere, we didn't go any place, but kids weren't able to go to the mall to see Santa for Christmas. We started Santa's Winter Wonderland at Blue Ridge PBS. It's a drive-through holiday experience, and guess how much it cost? Nothing. You know why? Because those kids needed to see Santa Claus. They did. You'd keep it you're in your car, turn your radio on, drive by, there's Mrs. Claus, there's Santa, there's wonderful lights in our parking lot, and we foot the bill for that because it was important. And we've done it, this is our third year. I would love for council to help, for the city to help and help us all the way down McNeil Drive, getting those lights and bringing those kids free so they can have a holiday experience. So think about that for next year. I'm good for this year. See there? I didn't even ask for anything today. We're the most trusted TV station for the 17th year in a row nationwide, and we'll continue to do that. One last thing, and I know I've run just a little bit over my time. Here I go. We created the first education channel that's digital. It looks like a YouTube channel, and it goes on the air broadcast as well. Very first one in the country. It's called ECHO, and it stands for what we stand for: education, community, health, and opportunity. Our ECHO channel is for everybody, and people across the country are figuring out how we did it and how much it cost. Almost nothing. So we're here for you, and the next time I talk to you, I hope you're talking to me, because we're here to listen. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. Council, I'm going to call on Councilmember Cobb and Best Bitch if they have any thoughts or questions that they want to. mention?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Will and Lisa, for being here today and for giving us this great update. You certainly shared some things with me I wasn't aware of in terms of the first all-color broadcast and the first digital. So, and I'm excited about PBS Appalachia. That's
We are
incredible.
too. We are too. Please, each one of you, please come visit us at Blue Ridge PBS.
What would you, in your brainstorming and visioning, what are some ways that we could expand our partnership with you as a city?
I see a symbiotic relationship because remember, I'm here to tell the good news. So anything that you think is the good news that needs to be shared with the masses, and not just here, but I mean across the Commonwealth and across the region and then nationwide, that we're your mouthpiece. We're here to serve you versus to serve any other entity. We're not here to make the commercial dollars. We're here to actually serve the community. And so what I see necessarily is creating that relationship along with your Roanoke Valley TV to work together to continue to tell those stories and get that message out. There's so many opportunities with Echo and how it's available, not just for council and not just for government, but for education, for industry, for economic development. Echo is really a tool that has yet to be utilized, I guess, to its full capacity. And like I said, my colleagues across the country are trying to see how that works because it doesn't follow the strict television guidelines. It follows the YouTube format, which is what all of our kids are watching. So it doesn't start at 12 o'clock and end at 12:30. It could be a 6-minute piece, an 8-minute piece, and then move on to other things. So it's embracing that new technology to do that. And I want to work together with the city to tell the stories that you see because I don't see them all. It's up to you to tell me what you need.
Well, thank you, Mr. Anderson, and thank you, Ms. Fenderson, for all things you do. I want to digress just a little bit, and then I'll come back to your question, because my wife and I had the very good fortune to develop a friendship with the former engineer there, Dan Ulmer, and his wife, Deborah, and he gave us a tour shortly before he retired, and they relocated, as you know, down in North Carolina. I don't have enough technical expertise to understand how a lot of the stuff that he showed us really works, but it was very clear what it does and what it has done to improve the operation of your station. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to give him some credit for the hard work that he did while he was here. But coming back to your question, I've been very impressed with the local programs that you've done, and I actually just pulled some up here, and I won't go through all of them, but What It Takes with Tom Landon, Right Around the Corner, Real Life with Susan Harf, Business Matters with Gene Morano, which I actually watched yesterday, I think it was, Taylor Time, which is so wonderful. I mean, Taylor Time, that's just Conversations with Bob Denton. And one that isn't being produced anymore, but occasionally you do some shows from Cookin' Cheap, and I just love watching.
I put a new Cookin' Cheap out every single Friday online, and it's amazing
Oh, you put
how
them online?
there are people
Okay.
that wait for it at Friday at 3 o'clock.
Well, what I'm suggesting is that, you mentioned covering everything from Lynchburg all the way to the southwest. So I think it would be a great idea, not only for the city of Roanoke, but for all those localities to be able to send you ideas for a program on what's working in Lee County, which is the furthest one out there. What's working in Tazewell? What's the good news in, we go right down the line. But to have a program that is, you come up with a much catchier title than I ever would, but something like the good news from our local cities, counties, and towns. And have that as another one of these type of programs. I just think that would be really good, because we want people to know what's happening in Roanoke, what the things that we're accomplishing here, but we also want to find out what's going on, down in Russell County.
Councilman, that show's called Hometowns. Episode 1 was River and Rails. It profiled Daint and St. Paul. It has won 2 Emmy Awards as it was a pilot episode for us. We'll continue hometowns as we move throughout PBS Appalachia. And so you're right on track with what our thinking is.
So will that be have a regular slot on a weekly basis, just like these others that I mentioned?
Yes, sir.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, St. Paul is a great example for the park that they're developing down there, which is really still in very much in the formative stages. But what they're doing down there is really going to be a great additional recreational opportunity for people in Southwest Virginia. So
I'll send you all a copy, a link to hometowns, so you can see that.
Yeah.
It's absolutely gorgeous.
That would be great. Thank you.
And if I can just say one thing, we have some ideas. Oh, sorry, just very quickly.
He's not aware. He's traveling, doing all the fundraising. We have a few ideas specifically for the city of Roanoke that we'd like to discuss with you at another time, maybe invite you to the station for lunch or something, but we do have a few ideas for you as well.
Thank you. I may go to the Vice President.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Well, first of all, I didn't want to interrupt you during your presentation, but thank you for that acknowledgement of my granddaughter Kennedy. That was unexpected.
Fantastic.
She's
chip off the old block, eh?
I believe so. She's looking at broadcasting as her future endeavors, but I do have, and I appreciate this opportunity to ask you, because it is a question that I've had for a while. Over the years, my husband and I have purchased many different documentaries. So my question is, does Blue Ridge PBS receive any of the proceeds from the purchases of those documentaries? Some of them are local, but many of them, of course, are coming from the national PBS. So do you receive any funding from those?
When you go through Blue Ridge PBS and you become a member, we will give you the proverbial thank you gift.
Right.
The thank you gift comes off the top of your donation, but your donation for those documentaries actually comes to us, and then we will, if it's not a local, we'll have to pay for that, and then we get whatever's left after the donation. So our documentaries that, say, Lisa produced for Hotel Roanoke, that 100% minus materials comes to us. The national documentaries, we pay a premium price for that, and then the rest of the donation comes to Blue Ridge PBS.
Okay, that's good to know, because like you said, becoming a member is the best way to support our own local PBS. And let me just echo, what Mr. Bestfitch just said. Quality programming, and so informative, and a lot of things that we would not necessarily be aware of. So thank you both for what you're doing and the service that you're providing. And I will definitely keep that in mind as to moving forward and telling others, what's the best way to make sure we keep you guys on the air.
Council, thank you so very much. Those, by the way, to mention, those programs that the councilman mentioned were the programs that were just created in the past, save right around the corner, that were produced in the past 3 years. We have a fantastic production team, and they are growing like nobody's business.
Absolutely. Great.
Thank you. Recognize, Will?
Don't go away yet.
Don't go anywhere. Going down. Going down the line. Vice Mayor.
Yeah, I'm going to echo what they echoed, and we're just going to keep echoing here. And that was genius to start out with. But thank you so much for coming in, and thank you to Mr. Bestfitch and Mr. Cobb for bringing you guys forward, because I did learn a lot. But I want to just go a little bit further on something that Mr. Bestfitch had said about engagement, and I would like to see, and I'm happy to come in and talk about it, Ms. Fenderson, but I would like to see the City of Roanoke have an opportunity to share some of our opportunities, some of our events, because we, I have to admit, we do struggle sometimes with disseminating information and getting information out to our residents. And I see an opportunity for us to be able to do that. And I know Mr. Bestfitch talked about Lynchburg and some of the other communities, which is great, but I'd like to zero in and focus on some of the things that we're doing here in Roanoke City. and share some of the events, opportunities, workshops, just whatever it is that we're doing that we can't seem to get out through other avenues. Perhaps this may be an opportunity for us.
Madam Vice Mayor, I have a flamethrower on Poor Mountain that gets that information straight into your house.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. Because I admit, and I think, our communications, we have a new communications person, and I know that has been a part of our struggle, because we have some good stuff going on in the city of Roanoke and a lot of good information out there, but sometimes we have a challenge, getting that information to our residents. So I welcome the opportunity to talk to you.
Okay. I came to this city because of the education that I believe my children would get here. And I will tell you on record that my children have had the most top-notch education. My daughter is at the governor's school now, and I believe that this is the best place to get an education economically, and you can't do any better. I think we should sing the praises of what we have in our community, and if we're able to do that, we can bring more in and receive more resources.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, anybody? All right, well, great presentation. Thank you all both for coming by and sharing that information with us.
Mr. Mayor, I'm not asking you to come on television again this year at Santa's Winter Wonderland either.
You're not? I thought I was ready for that again.
He told me he was looking forward to it.
He did great, and we have it on tape, and we'll play it back.
Thank you so much. All right. Okay, we're down to the item number 7, reports of city officers and comments of city manager. I'm pleased this time to recognize our city manager, who is just back from a trip for the National League of Cities in Kansas. Should I say Kansas or Kansas City?
Kansas City.
Kansas City.
Missouri.
Kansas and Missouri.
All I know is Kansas City Chiefs. But Bob did a great job up there, so welcome back, Mr. City Manager, and we're pleased and proud of the presentation you made last week there at the National League of Cities. And so at this time, I'll recognize you to introduce the briefings.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We do have 2 briefings this afternoon. One is on our Economic Development Strategic Plan, which Mark Nelson will be delivering here in just a few moments. He'll go into a lot more detail associated with this. I just want to preface this by reminding you all, of course, that we have partnered with a consultant that he'll introduce as a part of the presentation over the last several months. I think every one of you at some point has interacted to some degree with the consultant team, and they have delivered to us the draft document, which Mark is going to cover. That draft document has similarly been presented to the Economic Development Authority, which is a funding partner in this effort. After today's presentation, that will be followed up with the actual copy of the draft plan that you all will receive via email from Mark. And then in December, we'll be coming back asking for first EDA's recommendation and then your approval of the plan. So this is the introduction, really, of the draft itself. And then the second briefing we will get, you all had requested a briefing from the Western Virginia Water Authority on the presence of the compounds everybody keeps referring to them as forever chemical, Gen X, whatever the different terms are. Of course, that has been in the news more recently, and the Executive Director, Mike McAvoy, is going to walk us through that presentation and assure you of the steps that the authority has taken, both to protect the water supply as well as identify the source and address that as well. So with that, I'm going to ask Mark to take us through the economic development plan, and then we'll take questions and then transition into the other briefings. Thank you.
I actually brought a different, slightly different version of the presentation, so I'm going to put that straight.
Welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate it. Could you just give me 1 second here?
Mark, the copy they have, is that?
It's pretty much the same. It just kind of narrows a bit, so it doesn't. There's a lot of text in the document, so I just wanted to give it a little focus. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and members of council. I regret to inform you, I do not have 2 Emmy Awards to present to you today, but they do, and I'm hopeful that if this goes well, that in a few years that they will be coming out to do specials on us. So thank you so much for having me, and I'm pleased to join you this afternoon to provide an overview of the Department of Economic Development's strategic plan to date. We've been working with our consultant, Ernst & Young, since June of this year. The plan is nearly complete. The final edits just came back from the consultants literally about 30 minutes before I walked over here. So we're going to be looking at those and look to plan to come back to you in December with a complete document and ask for your approval. Given that there is going to be some turnover on council at the end of the year, the city manager thought it would be prudent for us to come and present the plan to you, at least the bulk of the plan, in order to receive feedback and obtain guidance on its content as we move from the planning stages toward implementation. So what I'd like to do today is walk you through the process, and feel free to stop and ask me any questions, or if you'd like to, you can wait till the end. So when I became director in August of 2021, the manager and I discussed the need for a strategic plan for the department's future. Having been with the department for nearly 10 years by that time, I knew very well how we had done economic development in the past, and I'm very proud of the numerous accomplishments that we had during that time: the revitalization of downtown, development of key mixed-use communities in places like Wasena and near the Health Sciences campus in South Roanoke, the standing up of what is now a thriving business accelerator, the RAMP Accelerator, and the partnerships that we forged in that process with members of the business community, the educational institutions, and our nonprofit sector. So the desire to do a plan wasn't so much based in we're going to do it better. It's the fact that over time we've had a lot of key things that have happened that have caused the department to take on more responsibilities than we previously had focused on. So some of the things that caused that were retirements and departures of long-serving leaders, increased interest from citizens in recruiting retail and commercial and other sectors, focus on economic development programs that address community development and equity concerns, and the addition of innovation and entrepreneurial programs to the department's portfolio. So, as the timeline shows, the actual mechanizations of the process have actually been moving forward since about a year ago. In October 2021, we issued a request for proposals that asking for a strategic plan. From December 21 until March of 22, we had a review committee that considered responses from 10 consulting firms from across the country. In April, the city entered into a contract with Ernst & Young to develop the strategic plan, and the cost was $98,112, $50,000 of which was paid by the city, $48,112 paid by the Economic Development Authority. From May till October, city staff and the EY team conducted interviews, focus groups, and surveys to formulate the plan. And in November 22, with the plan substantially complete, we are going through final edits and seeking council feedback. So the scope of work, basically the vision was to craft a strategy centered on job creation, increasing business investment, fostering innovation and entrepreneurship, and ensuring more inclusive opportunities for all residents and business leaders. In order to do that, we decided that we should look at the organizational structure and conduct a review and analysis of the way the department looks. The strategy development key pieces were determining the departmental roles in economic and community development as we worked with various partners in the community. Give structure to the community development-based departmental initiatives that we've taken on recently. Develop a roadmap defining the city's commitment to innovation and entrepreneurship. Formalize departmental approaches to the 3 legs of the traditional economic development stool: attraction, expansion, and retention. And then finally, draft and develop a strategic plan that would be 5 years. So in order to do that, the information and gathering process was basically the consultant conducted 17 one-on-one and tandem interviews with community leaders. I believe everyone on the council was involved in that process. We conducted focus groups. We convened 5 sector-based focus groups from across the community, including economic development staff, the innovation, technology, and entrepreneurship community, nonprofits, the city manager's economic development advisory board, and community and business leaders. Now, you may be wondering, what is the point of this photograph with Gene Morano? One of the things we did in October was I did a radio interview at WFIR, and it turns out that as outgoing as he is, Gene does not like people to touch him in photographs. So I leaned over to put my arm around him, and he immediately tensed up. So I thought, given that that was something he didn't like, you know, and I've known Gene a while, I would lean into it and then include the photograph here. It's just kind of a way to kind of give him a little bit of a thank you. So based on the work that the consultant did alongside staff, there were 5 goals that were identified. Each of these goals are broken out in later slides, so even though I included them in summary here, if it's okay with you, I'd like to move on to the individual slides where I can point out the information as we go along. So the first one, and the reason I loaded up a different version is because there's a lot of text on all these slides, and I didn't want to have to go over each point. I figured, you know, you didn't want to be here all day going over this. So I did highlight key points up there that I wanted to address. So goal number 1 was to elevate business recruitment and marketing aimed at employers in the City of Roanoke's established and emerging industries and complement regional and attraction efforts. So this came primarily from a gap in the department's approach to attraction. We work very well with the Roanoke Regional Partnership on large industrial manufacturing projects. We're in communication with them pretty much every day on things like this. The attraction from other sectors generally falls outside of their scope. And we're hearing more from citizens about, you know, why aren't we going after this retail place? Why aren't we going after this commercial sector? And the truth is that this is not something we have been geared up to do previously. If it was industry or manufacturing, we were on it. We were working alongside the partnership to do that. But if you came to us and said, why aren't we going after you know, a certain retail establishment, other than calling them and kind of approaching them through email and things like that, we didn't have a network or mechanism or the funding to be able to go and do those things like we did for industry and manufacturing. So that's one of the things that we wanted to call out in the plan. Another issue I wanted to point out is economic mobility, and this ties into the work with our community development partners. We're working with both the Workforce Board and the Advancement Foundation on grants from the National League of Cities aimed at helping residents find entry into the healthcare field and help business owners achieve compliance with permits. It also has cross-pollination with the upcoming Roanoke Biotech Project, which I'll talk about a little bit later, in the form of a lab technician associate's degree that will be available for Virginia Western Community College, STEM programs, bench jobs, and a number of other things that will come from that project. And under 1.2, I wanted to point out the digital presence. One of the things that we did, one of the smartest things I did was I promoted Lisa Soltis from Economic Development Specialist to a Senior Economic Development Specialist. And I shouldn't say I promoted her. I offered it to her. She chose to take it, and I'm very thankful for that. And so one of the key things that came out of that was the fact that we were able to bring in Brady Woolwine, who has a background in digital marketing, and she has really been great in helping us pump up our social media, improve the output that we have as a department, and now we're going to be moving, after this plan is finished, into a revamp of the department's website. So concerning business retention and expansion, goal number 2 is to proactively engage with employers to understand and address workforce available sites and other needs while connecting them to valuable information and resources. This is one area where the department is already strong. One of the great things about this plan is it identifies a lot of things that we need to work on, but it also includes things that we already do, and we saw that as a way to say, okay, we do this well, but is there a way we can do it better? Under 2.1, the structure for business visits and calls, we already do this very well, but the plan wouldn't be complete without including it because it's such an important part of what economic development does. And so we saw this as an opportunity to scan the marketplace, see if anyone else is doing it better, and see if we can incorporate that into how we do things. Under Objective 2.2, elevate the role as connector. We've always been a partner for community development projects, but with the Financial Empowerment Center and Bank On having prospered, and our work on community development projects like the Neighborhood Centers Plan, which we'll bring to you later, we now have information to build an architecture, to start building an architecture between the community development work we do and the Bank On and financial programs that we do. Another area is workforce challenges. So this is something I think, when most people think of workforce challenges, they think primarily of trades jobs, service jobs, and we have a lot of great jobs like that in Roanoke. But one of the key things that we are noticing is that these challenges go all across the spectrum. It goes into engineering jobs. It goes into biotech jobs. It reaches all across the spectrum. And so it's important for us to focus on all ends of the spectrum. The blue-collar jobs that we have that build the buildings that we do and that service a lot of our great tourism offerings. But it's also important to think about the fact that we need engineers. We need high-tech people. It runs all across the spectrum because if you looked in Cardinal News this morning, there was an article about where remote workers are and where they're moving to and where they're going. This is something that's happening all across the country, and it's important that we focus on all ends of the spectrum as we go through formulating this plan. So goal number 3 is entrepreneurship and innovation. And this one is very near and dear to my heart. For the past 7 years or so, I've been working on these issues for our department, for the city. I'm pleased to announce that on November 29th, we have an innovation administrator who will be joining us, who will be taking on the portfolio of innovation projects that we have. And this is very important because this is a person who will be able to spend full time on innovation and entrepreneurship, both as it extends to things like the innovation corridor, and then both how it reaches into other parts of the community for some of the entrepreneurial work we're doing on the community development side. And so 2 areas I wanted to call your attention to is under 3.1, collaboration with stakeholders. I think everybody by now is aware the city has received about $15.7 million from the state to stand up what we're calling the Roanoke Biotech Project. This is wet and dry labs, space for startups, and a presence for Johnson & Johnson's J-Labs program. The work done on this process goes back over a year, and it involves multiple stakeholders from Verge, the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center, Virginia Western Community College, and other groups. And over that time, we have really built a great network that will be able to take this and take the momentum we've built and use it towards other things that we want to do in the community that are innovation and entrepreneurial related. Under Objective 3.2, accessible entrepreneurial services, this is an area that we started focusing on under those NLC grants that I mentioned earlier, but we'd like to do more. We do work with the Small Business Development Corporation. We do work with the Advancement Foundation. They can help with that, but this really is a need of focus for us on the days ahead, and that's why we're excited to have this plan, because it's work we want to do. We just need to find a way to formalize that and do it better. So under goal number 4, foster connectivity between workers and career paths in thriving industries and continue to enhance Roanoke's quality of life through placemaking and renewal efforts. And so 2 areas I'd like to highlight for this goal is under Objective 4.1, as I mentioned earlier, we have with the Financial Empowerment Center and Bank On, most of that work is handled by Brandon McGinley, who's done such a great job of building and promoting and maintaining financial literary services in our community. And I'm not talking just in the city, I'm talking all over the region. One Saturday back in October, I was in the office doing some work, and Brandon comes rushing in, and Brandon's always got a blazer on, and he's always dressed really well, no matter how hot it is outside, and he's like huffing and puffing, he's running back to his office. I said, Brandon, are you okay? He's like, yes, I'm promoting something, I'm at the Craig County Fall Festival, promoting Bank On and Financial Empowerment Center, and I forgot my table. And I said, so you drove all the way back to get your table? He said, yes. I said, Brandon, I'll buy you a table. And he said, no, I can save money this way. And he grabbed it, and out the door he went, and he drove all the way back up to Craig County, and he went out and promoted the services. He has done such a great job building this and has now this great bank of information. And so what we've been talking about is the possibility, we have a new community development specialist who's come on board, and again, we'd like to build that architecture between those 2 people and the work that they're going to do. And that is something I think that is very important to us, because with this information that we have, in addition to going out and providing these services, we're trying to figure out there must be a way that we can be able to go out to the community saying, this is the information we have, whether it's a quarterly report or a monthly report or however we do it, but this is what we have, community, take a look at this and tell us what you think. So that's another thing that I want to highlight in this plan. And then under Objective 4.2, placemaking and revitalization efforts, we have the Neighborhood Centers Plan, which we should be bringing to you next month. And that is kind of the highlight of what we're working on these so far on those efforts. So goal number 5, asset and infrastructure development, increase the availability of quality business at locations, and continue to strengthen infrastructure for current and future growth. So this is an area that doesn't garner as much attention as it should, but it's just as important in economic development as anything else. What I really wanted to emphasize is the need to explore incentive tools that will help us further growth. If you look under 5.1, so basically we have a very successful enterprise zone program. It provides facade grants, water, fire, sewer hookups, permit fee rebates, but it's also limited in scope. It's a state program. You have to be, the zone is only in certain parts of the city. And so what we're seeing is when we go into Southeast, for example, we see communities that really want to get some sort of assistance. They look to us to say, what's in your toolbox to help us? And beyond that, right now, we don't really have anything beyond the enterprise zone program and reference to outside agencies to be able to help them. And so that's one of the things that we really wanted to emphasize, because our staff would love to do more work in Northeast and Southeast, but we need the tools beyond what we have in the enterprise zone to be able to do that. And that's something else that we wanted to highlight in the plan. So these next few slides that are in your packet, I can go as slowly or as fast as you'd like me to. They lay out the partners that are associated with the plan and with the objectives. I can read them if you'd like me to, or if you have specific questions, I can address them. You know, there's 5 slides worth of partners, and I'm not sure how you want me to handle that, but I can generally just kind of go through them, or if we can wait till the end if anybody has any questions.
I do have a question, if it's okay, Mr. Mayor, as far as the implementation partners. Mark, I was just looking at the list, and I see a lot of them, but there's not a lot of diversity. I see UPL. I'm not even sure if they're still active, but do you have more? Or, I mean, because with something as important as our economic strategic plan, I just want to make sure we're covering all of our bases, and I just didn't see enough of the implementation partners, and that may be coming later. I know these are just the initial stages of it, but I was just curious. I heard some echoing down on the other end of the dais that they were wondering the same thing.
No, I think that's a very valuable question, and that, you know, if we've missed anything, if we've missed someone, we're here to ask you what we've missed, how we can do it better. So if there's something on here that we've missed, please let us know. We'd be happy to work with them and add
So you're receptive to that? Okay,
yes, ma'am.
absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. I was just wondering.
Does anybody else have any questions? Or? Okay. So, flipping through the partners. So that takes us to the peer organizational comparison. Now, admittedly, I struggled with this slide because it doesn't go as in depth as I would like it to. It's not necessarily an apples to apples comparison. First of all, there is one thing on the slide. The version that you have says that Danville has 6 employees. They actually have 11, 8 part-time, 8 full-time, 3 part-time. But this slide is really meant to represent several peer departments that we communicate with and are compared to. You know, but one of the key things I think for us is that when we look at, I want to call your attention to is when we look at our budget and the things that we want to do in terms of promotion, in terms of marketing, prior to Bob's arrival from between 2012 and 2017, our marketing and promotion budget and our travel and training budget were cut 25%. They were increasingly went downhill over the years, and they, you know, when we hit COVID, they were never restored. If we want to do this work where we go out and we chase more of these businesses and we do more of this work, it's very important for us to be able to get a budget that allows us to do those things. Another key thing is when you look at our travel and training, the way this basically, the premier certification for our industry is called the CECD. It's offered by the International Economic Development Council. It takes 6 courses to be able to sit for the exam. My first 8, it took me 8 years to be able to sit for the first 6 courses because our travel and training was so limited that we could only send certain people at certain times. And when I talk to other agencies, you know, there isn't, for one of the counties up near Richmond, I know they're a lot bigger, but we have a travel and training budget that's usually between $8,000 and $10,000. Their budget is $30,000 for 4 people. So generally my concern about this isn't, I'm not saying that we should need to have $30,000, but my concern is that when I think about our staff members and I think about the work that we do, the competition now is as fierce as it's ever been for talent. And if we don't invest in these folks, they're going to go someplace that will, because they're, you know, I can tell you, we've had talent in our office where people have come up to me and said, just jokingly, oh, I'm thinking about poaching this person, or I'm thinking about talking to this person. And you know, usually after our fight out in the dust, I tell them back off of my people. But I'm kidding. But the point being that we have to invest in these things in the office. You know, in order to be able to keep people and build the team that we want to build. So,
ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Price.
Mark, I don't want to hold you up, but
since you brought that up about losing talent, and I can think of two folks within your department that have recently left. And given what you just said, is there any, hopefully on the near horizon, that they will be replaced, I guess my question is, what's the game plan?
Sure, I can tell you. Since I became director, Sean Atkins left to become director of economic development in Patrick County, so that was a step up for him. Aisha Johnson left to take a position in the private sector. She wanted to focus primarily on diversity, equity, and inclusion. She now works for Branch Builds, and that's all she does. That's the sole focus of what she does. The third one, Tori McNiff, was with us for 8 months. Her partner was deployed as part of the Foreign Service to Serbia, and they decided that they didn't want to be apart from one another, so she resigned to go join. She picked up the dogs, all of her stuff, and moved to Europe, and she's there now. So 2 of those were pursuing opportunities that were actually steps up for them, and the third one was one that, I asked her, I said, are you happy? Is it money? And she said, no, this is what I want to do. I want to go and live in Europe. So, basically we have one position that we are putting out through HR. We filled, Sean's position was filled a long time ago. Aisha's was filled with someone who started last month. And then with Tori's position, the pool of applicants just hasn't been all that diverse, so we went down to HR upon Bob's suggestion and started working with them about a way to put it out more, cast out a broader net so we'd be able to diversify the pool and have a bigger group of talent to choose from. So that's the last one that we have. We'll have 9 staff members total. We currently have 1 vacancy.
Gotcha. Well, in your list, and I'm glad you, put this together, comparison-wise, under entrepreneurship and small business support, I would hope that would include minority support as well.
Oh, absolutely, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I would put it in writing. Add it in there, make it plain. Just a friendly suggestion. Thank you, Mark.
You can make as many friendly suggestions as you like. You paid for it. We're here to present it to you and see what you
Well, I'm just saying that and I'm sure it caught some of my colleagues' attention as well. So,
Excellent
this
point.
is
Yes,
a working document.
That's exactly what it is. Yes, ma'am.
By other eyes. So.
And so I wanted to move on to next steps if everyone's okay with that. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I'm fine.
So basically, in closing, what we wanted to do is get feedback from you. It can be today, it can be if you see something over the next couple of weeks that you see that you wanted us to address, we'd be happy to do that. Review and revise the plan based on your feedback. That would be this month. And then as Bob laid out earlier, we'd like to seek recommendation of the plan from the Economic Development Authority. They have seen the same things that you have. That included an additional slide related to what the Economic Development Authority does. I didn't include it in here because of time constraints. I'm happy to share that if you'd like to see it. And then we'd like to come back to you in December to get your approval of the plan. So at this time, I'm happy to answer any questions.
And Mayor, the only thing I'd add to what Mark said, just to kind of reinforce again, between now and when we're seeking action, you'll actually receive in advance a copy of the actual draft plan. Right now, Mark's just providing those highlights, so you'll have that prior to us coming in asking for that final. And that information, that draft plan will also be posted out on the website and made available in the libraries and stuff for anybody that wants to be able to view it as well. So.
All right, thank you. Vice Mayor?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have one question, Mr. Cowell. Will this briefing, and you might know too, Mark, come before our budget retreat? I'm just asking because I know he talked about some of the funding and perhaps if this needs to be a part of our discussion for our budget, maybe.
Probably not yet, because first we'll need the plan. First we'll need you all to actually authorize the plan. You feel comfortable with the plan, getting it approved. Then the recommendations that are in it that have some sort of financial, because there's several of them in there that have financial costs associated.
Right.
So Mark will actually formulate that in his budget proposal that comes to the city manager's office. So he'll have to make those inquiries first. So I don't think it'll go beyond kind of this discussion, as well as when you actually adopt the plan with it and stuff. We haven't actually even formulated the cost yet associated.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. Well, I guess we will still have some discussion if we want to at the retreat.
And that was important to us to be able to, we've raised the concerns, but now it's incumbent upon us to go back and define what the needs are. We don't hold any illusion that that would be done by this budget process, but we wanted to be able to get this plan in place and then take a realistic look as to what we'll need to do it. So
Yeah,
it won't
I
be
just
right
wanted to make
away.
sure we address it, because I do know that we have lost some folks, and we don't want to continue to do that. And if it's a funding thing that we need to talk about, then certainly want to have that discussion, but.
And that part will actually, remember, part of your budget retreat will definitely include a discussion regarding the compensation study.
Yeah,
done
I guess
across
that's
the
what I
whole-
was alluding
So
to.
yes,
I just
that
wanted to
will-
make
and
sure.
So to the extent that the positions that Mark has identified in this plan, or that were identified in this plan, that are part of that, absolutely, we'll be talking about that in
Okay,
the retreat.
sounds
There-
good.
There are other things, I think, in here that could potentially have budgetary implications as well. Those will come in the discussion of the budget proposal as we come forward throughout the rest of the year.
Okay, that might simplify it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you,
Anybody
Mr.
else?
Mayor.
Council, got any questions? Mr. Cobb?
Thank you, Mark. This is great. I would just reiterate what several of us have said and Ms. Price named. I know that, the Small Business Development Center, I think through some grants, we're able to place a couple of persons on staff to work specifically with women-owned or minority-owned businesses, African-American, Hispanic, Asian. I think it's important that we also offer that as a city, and I know you've mentioned that here, but to really say that up front and to support it, I think is important. Under business growth and marketing, I'm really excited to see the development of an incentive policy or program to expand job creation, capital, and community investments. I think this aligns with what I just mentioned, but for people who want to do business in the community, creating a pathway, a streamlined process for them to do that, and to help us understand what kind of incentives, what kind of policy incentives, because that's our primary work, will be helpful to not only attracting businesses of every size, but sustaining them for the long term. And then the third thing I just wanted to point out was I really like your focus on customer relationship management. I think you all have done that very well. I think one of the greatest stories of that is Mass General.
Also a Lisa Soltis project.
Well, but it was about relationship and staying in relationship and staying in contact with a company over a decade or maybe even longer. And we see the fruit of that venture now. So I'm not sure everyone fully understands in the community how important relationship management is in not only attracting new businesses, but valuing them along the way. And so I really like the approach you're taking here to not only catalog the touch points, insights, and requests, but to have a way to follow up on those. And I'm eager to see how that works, because I think that will yield a lot of positive things for the city. Thank you.
Anybody, another question? Mark, thank you, and thank you and your department for the work that you do, and especially getting back with me on some issues, because I get a lot of questions in terms of our
Anytime, that's what we're here to do.
Economic development around the city, and so we look forward to continuing to smooth. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mark, and we will move to the second briefing where Mike McAvoy, Executive Director of Western Virginia Water Authority, is going to explain what HFPODA is and what the authority is doing about it. Thank you.
Welcome, Mike.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of Council, thanks for the invitation. And like our two previous speakers, I have a PowerPoint for you, but unlike the two previous speakers, I'm not nearly as polished, so bear with me.
Hopefully it's on there.
Yeah, hopefully it is there.
I know the hard copy is, council has the hard copy. You're prepared, you're already ahead of us.
Somehow I keep thinking we're in the AM. I forgot we're in the
Again, thank you all for the opportunity to speak today. And I have the PowerPoint that you have before you is pretty wordy, so I'm going to try to condense it down. But we were trying to convey a lot of information, so please feel free to stop me. And we're talking about PFAS compounds, and I'm going to take you through a little bit about what those mean. Let's see. Come on now. It's not going to cooperate. So today we'll talk a little bit about PFAS compounds, and specifically HFPODA. Fortunately, it has a shorter name, Gen X. It makes it a lot easier for everybody. And then some information about HFPODA, kind of what actions we're taking. I think it's, you all know by now we discovered this in the Spring Hollow Reservoir. And kind of our investigative efforts on how to get in the reservoir and kind of some next steps. So per and polyfluoral alkyl substances, shorthand for that, even chemists had to come up with a shorthand for this one, is PFAS, and they are everywhere. They make modern society comfortable for us. So they're in waterproofing clothing, stain resistant. The carpets in here no doubt have the compounds in it. The cushions you're sitting on, the very dust in this room, your blood has probably 5 or 6 of these compounds in it. So they're everywhere. Again, they've made our lives convenient. Non-stick pans for cooking, various cosmetics, all these kind of things that you can kind of see here on the chart. And what makes them attractive for consumer products and industry is that they're carbon and fluorine bonded chemicals. That bond is really strong. To date, there's only been one bacteria, I think, that's been isolated worldwide that's been able to break that bond. So these compounds don't break down very easily. They stay out in the environment for a long time when they're released. There's just not a lot of biodegradation that you would typically see with chemicals that get released into the environment. They're heat resistant, cold resistant, they resist water and oil, and some of them can do both at the same time. So packaging, you see fast food wrappers. They're coated with compounds that both keep the oil from getting out onto you and keep water from getting into your hamburger. So those things are very, again, useful for a lot of different reasons. Again, they don't break down very easily over time. And the two most studied ones actually are not in service anymore, PFOA and PFOS. These two are 8 carbon molecules, and they have specific health effects, and they've been the most studied because of those health effects. There's about 6,000 of these compounds in this class, although about any one time there's maybe 400 in actual commercial use. So in drinking water, currently EPA does not regulate any of these compounds in drinking water. These are, even though they've been used for a long time, the analytical methods to detect them to the levels that we can now do are fairly new. So it used to be that our analytical methods just couldn't see down to really small levels that we can see today. We measure these now in parts per trillion. And to give you an idea, a part per trillion is 1 second in 32,000 years. So we're really getting down to almost detecting the molecules themselves. And as we analyze these more, we realize how prevalent they are in our society and that they can cause some health problems. So you can kind of see here on our slide, again, EPA does not regulate those. They have had advisories out for PFOA and PFOS. There is not an advisory until recently out for Gen X. What a lifetime advisory is in EPA parlance, EPA has 2 regulatory mechanisms. One is a lifetime advisory, and essentially what they do is they look at the health aspects of drinking water, and the assumption here is that you drink water for 2 liters of water a day for 70 years. And then they add some safety factors on top of that. And then they look at the risk of developing an adverse health impact. And then the second level of regulation that they have is an actual drinking water standard. And currently, again, there's no standards for some of these compounds, although EPA is actively working on those. And we expect PFOA and PFOS, the industry does, to have interim standards put out for draft comment at the end of this year or early next year. So stay tuned on those. We have tested the reservoirs and the finished water at Carbons Cove, and very happy to report that we have none of these compounds present in those in that water source. We've done the same thing for Crystal Spring, And we also did Spring Hollow. And it was negative for all these compounds except for one, the Gen X compound. And that was a little unusual to us for a couple of reasons. One, that compound is used in very specific applications that I'll talk about in a minute. And there are no manufacturers nearby us that would be using this compound. So right away we were kind of suspicious of the results there. Also, the literature would kind of suggest that when you test positive for a PFAS compound, usually you get 2 or 3 together. It's maybe the result of some kind of industrial discharge or a legacy environmental site, and you wouldn't just see this one compound by itself. So again, we were a little surprised to see it, and again, there was no EPA guidance on this. A couple of states had looked at it. Michigan had adopted a 300 part per trillion standard, and North Carolina, who has been dealing with this issue quite a bit in the Cape Fear part of the state, had adopted a 140. But there really wasn't a lot of available information on this, although EPA started working on that for us. So specifically, what is Gen X? HFPODA. That's the shorthand for that compound. The trade name is Gen X, and that's a compound manufactured by the Chemours Company. It is used as a polymerization aid, so in and of itself, it's not a product, an end product. It's actually used, you can think of it as a catalyst, or it's an aid to make other compounds. And the compound is actually, I believe, manufactured in North Carolina at a Chemours facility there, and then it's used to make fluoridated polymers at several facilities that Chemours runs in the United States, including up in West Virginia. And typically the compounds we're talking about, or the end product we're talking about, are Teflon. So these are fluoridated plastics that have a lot of industrial uses, generally under the name Teflon, although they have a variety of other compounds as well. Again, they're weather resistant. They have a lot of chemical properties that just make them really critical for industry. And they're especially important in semiconductor manufacturing. The automobile industry uses quite a few of these products. So again, pretty much a lot of the things we do every day, these are important compounds for that. EPA started studying this compound because it was a replacement for PFOA. So prior to the introduction of the Gen X process that Chemours developed, the compound PFOA was used. Again, PFOA had some very serious health consequences. So DuPont first, and then Chemours came up with this replacement compound. And initially it was thought to be a pretty good trade-out because PFOA accumulates in your bloodstream and has, again, documented health effects, and is also very prevalent in the environment, and it's hard to break down. So if once it gets out in the environment, it doesn't go anywhere. But EPA started looking at Gen X, again, primarily due to the experience they were having in North Carolina, and they realized this compound is very mobile. Once it gets out, especially into the water sources, it can move around quite quickly. It's a surfactant, so it kind of tends to float on the surface, stays in the water column. It also can be transferred through the air. So, some health studies started to show that it might have adverse liver and kidney impacts. So. And again, there's just a limited number of manufacturers that use this compound throughout the country. So the health department followed up with some testing after ours at both Spring Hollow and Carbons Cove, and they confirmed our results. Again, nothing at Carbons Cove of any PFAS compound, and then the same at Spring Hollow with the exception of the Gen X molecule. In response, we started increasing our sampling. We started looking at the Roanoke River. It was the obvious source. If you're not familiar with Spring Hollow, we have an intake on the Roanoke River, and we actually actively pump out of the Roanoke River into the Spring Hollow Reservoir. So the testing results showed that it was in the finished water at Spring Hollow and also the reservoir, but our testing could not find it in the river. And for a while, we actually kind of wondered if it was coming through the air. So we actually set up air monitors to try to detect it in the air because we just weren't seeing it in the river, and we were trying to figure out where it was coming from. All this information we started putting out on our website, and then this summer we actually started doing direct correspondence to customers that use the Spring Hollow water. And I've included a chart here of some sampling in in 2022 of the finished water, you can kind of see the numbers that are out there at the reservoir. So what kind of really changed was in June of 2022, EPA came out with some new health advisories. They changed the health advisories for the two existing ones, PFOA and PFOS. You can see they dropped them dramatically from 70 part per trillion down to less than 1 part per trillion for both those compounds. They started regulating another compound, PFBS, and then also started regulating the Gen X compounds, and specifically HFPODA. And again, prior to that, they had not done anything, and then they established a regulatory standard of, or a health advisory of 10. Some of the actions they took there, they said that utilities should start monitoring. If you detected this compound, should start monitoring more, provide increased notification to your customers, which we did. Interestingly enough, they did not recommend the use of bottled water at this time, and they're still doing quite a lot of research in this area. North Carolina, again, has been kind of the lead on this, and North Carolina actually opted not to change their regulatory standard from the 140 down to 10. So you can kind of see that this number is still a bit in flux. So this is just some actions we took, and we kind of defined them before June and after June, and the reason being that when EPA published that health advisory, that really gave the state regulatory agencies a little bit of a hook to help us with the investigation. Prior to that, again, we were sampling the river and we were doing some research on industries upstream that maybe could be discharging this, or old legacy industrial sites. We were looking for old landfill sites. Again, we were kind of exploring the air deposition possibility. We finally did have one positive result in the river, and that led to another one. And after the publication of the health advisory in June, that allowed especially DEQ to really become much more active, because then they had a regulatory lever. But again, when you looked upstream of Spring Hollow, you know, Spring Hollow is almost to the Montgomery County line, right downstream of the merger of the North and South Forks of the Roanoke River. There just aren't a lot of businesses upstream of our intake, not a lot of manufacturing facilities. But we started checking them all out, and in addition to that investigative work, we also started to rehab an existing activated carbon system. We have a system at Spring Hollow, granular activated carbon, and it's a filtration system. There was some evidence in the literature that it could be used for Gen X removal, so we replaced the media in there, and we started essentially forcing it to work in a way that would help remove this compound. It really wasn't designed to do that, but our staff did a great job of modifying it, and we've actually got approval from the authority's board of directors to go out and do a larger project that will do some improvements out there to put in the piping and valving that we need to make that fix permanent and allow better operation of the granular activated system out there. So we have that under design right now. And again, we developed a working group with DEQ and VDH. And let's see here, let me go to the next slide. And again, we, you know, especially working with DEQ, this is really kind of where they shine. This is their regulatory expertise. They looked at all their data, reports, different things. You know, we just started talking with them and trying to figure out where this would be coming from. Eventually, that led DEQ to do a inspection of a company in Elliston, Virginia, on the South Fork of the Roanoke River, ProChem Incorporated. They're ironically an industrial wastewater treatment company, and DEQ did an inspection of that facility in early October and followed up with some sampling the next day and a series of questions for the staff at ProChem about some of the things they were doing. And the sample results came back in early November and confirmed that they were indeed discharging this compound to the sewer system that serves the Elliston area that was running to the Elliston wastewater treatment plant. That plant was removing some of the compound, but the majority of it was passing right through the plant into the South Fork Roanoke River and flowing into the Roanoke River, and then we were pumping it into Spring Hollow. Now, I will say we haven't been pumping for quite a while out of the river at Spring Hollow, but that's how we theorize it got in there. And it really took a lot of investigative work by a number of staff at DEQ and and our staff, and a lot of sampling and time. The ProChem staff have confirmed that indeed what was kind of happening there is they were, again, they're in the industrial wastewater treatment business. They were servicing ion exchange resins for Chemours in West Virginia. So they're the Washington Works plant in West Virginia. They were had these exchange resins that were really being used for the removal of calcium and manganese as part of their wastewater treatment process. And the Gen X compound was adhering to those resins. They would be shipped down to Elliston for regeneration to make them new again and shipped back. And that wastewater was going to the Elliston wastewater treatment plant and then out to the river. So that's kind of how all that kind of came to being. And I'll say that the ProChem folks, have, according to DEQ, have been very cooperative and have ceased servicing that equipment. Just to make sure, I sent both companies a letter to tell them, please stop doing this. And so we feel like we've found the source. The question is, how long will it take for this to clear out of the river? We're going to continue sampling. We obviously want to make sure, or assure our customers that this compound is no longer in the river before we resume pumping into the reservoir. In the meantime, we're going to continue using the activated carbon system, and we're going to go ahead and finish those improvements to that system to make sure that in case there's some other compound in the future that we don't know about, you know, we feel like we've got this one under control, but there may be something else new. And activated carbon is really good for a variety of treatment possibilities. So we're going to go ahead and make that improvement there at Spring Hollow, so it'll be there in the future. We'll continue to run it until you know, we don't see that compound in the reservoir anymore, in the raw water that are coming into the reservoir. So, and again, as always, we'll be continuing working with VDH. They've been helpful with some funding so far, and then making sure our customers are kept informed of our progress. So. With that, be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Mike. And the question I have real quickly, is our water safe?
Yeah, so we are doing our best to get below the health advisory at Spring Hollow. Most of the sample results, we're sampling weekly at Spring Hollow, and most of the sample results have been below the 10. We have had a few above. And again, that has to do with really the ability of the system to treat the compound, because we've kind of retrofitted it. At Carbons Cove, Crystal Spring, all those are fine. There's that compound's not there. Those systems are completely separate. So it's really customers of the Spring Hollow Reservoir, which are primarily in Roanoke County. Those are primary Roanoke County customers. So.
I know, you know, now with all the news, that things that happen in Michigan and Mississippi and Camp Lejeune commercials that come on.
Yeah, those haven't been helpful.
You know, I just wanted to ask, I think that's what the public wants to know. Hey, tell us that. Mr. Bestpitch.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll digress just a little bit from what I was going to say about that Camp Lejeune situation. Anybody that's paying attention, any veteran who thinks they might have experienced anything at Camp Lejeune that could affect their health has to go directly, or may go, I should say, may go directly to the VA and not pay a lawyer's fee. So the commercials about attorneys wanting to get a cut out of whatever the veteran receives, there's no need for anybody to hire an attorney to deal with that situation. But there were two things that really surprised me about this whole situation as I followed it in the news, Mr. McAvoy. And the first one was that the EPA does not regulate any of these PFAs, many of which have been around for a long, long time, right?
Correct.
They don't regulate any of them, but they issue lifetime health advisories. What do you, I mean, I'm not, you know, you can't speak for them, I guess, but do you have an idea as to why they do not regulate?
So in under the Safe Drinking Water Act, there's a very long, purposeful process to develop a drinking water standard. And EPA is required to do a fair amount of research, and they come out with a health advisory. After that, they'll come out with what they call a MCL goal, maximum contaminant level goal. Generally, the goal is not to have anything. The goal is almost always zero. And then they'll actually publish the regulation And the regulation takes into account both the health issues, but also the availability of treatment and a few other things. And they are working on that right now, but I think a lot of it really had to do with the analytical techniques. Until a few years ago, it was just difficult to measure these compounds into these trace amounts that we see now. So people would run these tests and not see anything on the test, and it was because the tests weren't sensitive enough to detect it. So, by EPA standards, they are moving lightning fast to develop a. It was a just, you know, I'm kind of getting off topic here, but the director of the EPA, the administrator of the EPA, is the former head of the Environmental Regulatory Agency in North Carolina. So when he became the head of the EPA, he made this a priority.
Right.
And by EPA standards, they are moving very fast.
Well, I mean, when you have an advisory that says 70, and you take it down to 0.004,
right.
I mean, that, to me, that's just incomprehensible.
Yeah, and the test that again, the analytical methods have gotten much better, but the current test will only detect down to 2 parts per trillion. So there's really no way to even know if you're down below those very low numbers.
So the second thing that really surprised me is somebody, any type of manufacturing facility or any facility of whatever type that's discharging into a river, is there no requirement for them to test what they're discharging to make sure that it doesn't have any?
Yeah, so the Elliston plant is overseen by the Montgomery County Public Service Authority, and they have a pretreatment program. So industries that are discharging to their sewer system do have to get a permit. And it's my understanding that ProChem did have a permit. But because, again, this compound wasn't regulated, it wasn't on the list of things to test for.
It wasn't on the list of things that they
Which kind of speaks to why we want to go ahead and do all the improvements to the granular activated carbon system at Spring Hollow, just to make sure we've got it available for whatever comes down in the future.
Thank you for that. I think that is important, because, you know, you can't help but think about what else is out there.
Right.
All these different things that
exactly
have gone on. What else is going to come down, you know, next year or whenever? But
and we're actually very fortunate to be as high as we are up in the watershed. Again, my counterparts in other parts of the state have just been really surprised about this, because we have really super clean water. I mean, if you're, think about if you're like the city of New Orleans and you're getting everything that comes down the Mississippi River. You know, they have some real challenges on treatment. We should not be having these issues, but it shows you really have to be vigilant no matter where you're at.
Well, I remember when you told me about the Ballast Point Brewery coming up to Botetourt County and telling you that they didn't need to look at the water that they were going to use. They were concerned about what they were going to discharge, but they didn't look at, because they were used to in San Diego, they had to filter and treat all the water anyway.
That's right.
So they were going to do the same thing here, until they got here and found out that they didn't need to do anything to the water in Carmen's Cove. They could use it just exactly like it is. So I think that that speaks well to our health situation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I just have a quick question. Does ProChem and Chemours, whatever it is, do they have any financial obligation when something like that happens? Because I know you've gotten the $286,000 from the Department of Health, which is really good. I'm sure that helps, but do they have any sort of financial obligation, or would you know?
So I have not spoken to either company directly, other than to send them some correspondence asking them to stop doing what
Right, I'm just
doing.
wondering, because you asked them to stop, but if they don't stop?
DEQ is helping us to make sure that ProChem will not be able to discharge to the Elliston treatment plant again. In all likelihood, if they're and our board of directors has not made a decision on this yet, because I don't think we have really a good idea on the total costs. But if we were to try to recover some costs, it'd probably have to be through litigation. There is an ongoing lawsuit down in the Cape Fear area of North Carolina against Chemours for something similar. I think that lawsuit was filed in 2019, and it's just going through discovery right now. So it'll take a number of years to resolve that if we go that
Yeah, I was
route.
just wondering if there would be an incentive for them to comply. You send them a notice, and hopefully they will. But also with the upgrade on your GAC filter, is that going to catch the Gen X?
Yes, it's doing a decent job now, but we really
But the
want to.
upgrade will.
Yeah, we want to. So we want to add some depth to the media. We want to add another 3 feet. We don't put really where our struggle is on backwashing it. we really need to get a better system in place for cleaning it. It is expensive treatment, but it's obviously necessary. So.
Yeah, I was just wondering. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just wondering. Thank you.
All right, any other questions from members of council?
Mayor, if I may, I just want to thank Mike again for coming and doing this. As you all know, I sit on the board for the authority, and Mike has made the same presentation to a few other jurisdictions. He has kept the board informed all the way through this process, even before we knew what the source was. And his staff has been exhibited, as Mike had shown you. The staff there has been very innovative in trying both to test for it, to find the source, and ultimately to treat to make sure the water is safe for the consumers and stuff. So certainly want to thank Mike for his work and the staff's work on that as well. So
thank you, Mr. Cal.
All right, thank you. Ms. Morales.
I want to thank Mike as well for coming, and thank you. Thank the city manager for his help in getting you to come here to speak on this and to put the citizens of Roanoke at ease, as the mayor has said. Unfortunately, it's not for the county, and I believe city of Salem is affected as well.
So they've been doing some testing of their own and haven't seen anything yet. Okay. Part of it is we've kind of learning from DEQ's investigation that the discharge from ProChem might have been a little bit intermittent. But they've linked on their website. They linked to our data, and we've been keeping them informed, working together. But they actually haven't found. Again, it gets kind of how difficult it is to isolate this compound, but they haven't found it yet.
Yeah, well, I'm glad of your persistence in finding it, as you and I have had discussions about that, and that you did find it. It wasn't in Radford, it wasn't in Blacksburg, but it happened to be up in Alliston. And the other thing that I noticed you put in your next step was you'll be moving forward with the infrastructure and improvements at Spring Hollow to fully reconfigure the GAC filter system. And we had a conversation with regards to that and the funding. Where would you be getting the funding to work on that infiltration system?
So the board has approved a bond issue, going out for to borrowing for that. However, the health department has, under the bipartisan infrastructure law, there's money being set aside specifically for remediation of these PFAS compounds. So we've been talking with the health department. We're hopeful to get at least some of that cost through the health department from this federal funding.
What kind of money, what kind of bond money will you be looking
so,
at roughly?
The board has authorized $13.5 million, and we expect annual operating expenses of about $1 million a year.
Okay. Will any of that cost have to be borne by the customers?
It will be reflected in the rates, although we're a pretty capital-intensive business. We borrow money all the time, and our finances, there's something we really take a good look at. We can borrow money at very low interest rates, even in today's environment. So I don't expect it. We have a bond issue going out this year in the spring for $22 million. So I don't think it's going to be a significant effect on rates, but it will have to be factored into our rates.
Will that be something that the localities could also help offset if need be?
I'd love to have, if you guys if you want to help, that'd be great.
Okay, well, that's something we may have to talk about, just to keep from pushing that over to the customers if need be. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. All right. Since no questions, Mike, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And if just one more quick item, as a citizen, I'd just like to thank Ms. Price for coming out of retirement and serving in her time, and especially Mr. Bespich. I probably won't have a chance to come back and see you before another council meeting, but I do want to thank him for his service for many years on council. So thank you, Bill.
41 days.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you,
Mike. Thank you.
Ms. Cal, is that all of the...
That concludes the briefing. Yes, thank you.
All right, we're going to go down to... I'll tell you what, I'm going to take a 5-minute break on that, okay?
Good idea.
We'll be in recess for about 5 minutes.
Very good idea.
All right, we'll come back to our session. We're now down to item A and the items recommended for action. Item A is the acceptance of the Commonwealth of Virginia's $500,000 appropriation administered as a grant by the Department of Historic Resources for the Virginia Museum of Transportation. There's a resolution.
Move the resolution. Second.
Madam Clerk, would you please read the title paragraph?
A resolution accepting the Commonwealth of Virginia Department of Historic Resources award of funds in the total amount of $500,000 for the Virginia Museum of Transportation, authorizing the city manager to execute a memorandum of understanding among Virginia Department of Historic Resources, Virginia Museum of Transportation, and the City of Roanoke, and authorizing the city manager to take certain other actions in connection with the above matter.
All right. Is there any discussion among council? Any comments? I hear none. Madam Clerk, I'll ask you to call the roll, please.
Ms. Sanchez Jones.
Aye.
Vice Mayor White Boyd.
Aye.
Mr. Bestfitch.
Aye.
Mr. Cobb.
Aye.
Ms. Price.
Aye.
Ms. Moon.
Aye.
Reynolds. And Mayor Lee.
Aye. And the resolution passes. There is a budget ordinance.
Move the budget ordinance. Second.
Madam Clerk, could you read the title paragraph?
An ordinance appropriating funding from the Commonwealth of Virginia Department of Historic Resources, amending and reordaining certain sections of the 2022-2023 grant fund appropriations and dispensing with the second reading by title of this ordinance.
All right, any discussion among members of council? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Sanchez Jones.
Aye.
Vice Mayor White Boyd.
Aye.
Mr. Bestfitch.
Aye.
Mr. Cobb.
Aye.
Mrs. Price.
Aye.
Ms. Moon Reynolds.
Aye.
And Mayor Lee.
Aye, and the budget ordinance passes. Item B is acceptance of Virginia Department of Transportation FY22 Transportation Alternatives set aside authorization for new VDOT agreement and appropriation of funds for the Williamson Road pedestrian safety improvements. There's a resolution.
Move the resolution.
Second.
Madam Clerk, could you read the title paragraph?
A resolution accepting the Virginia Department of Transportation's award of funds to the city in the amount of $460,000 for pedestrian improvements to the Williamson Road pedestrian safety project, authorizing the city manager to execute a VDOT standard project administration agreement, and authorizing the city manager to take certain other actions in connection with the above matters and project.
All right, under area of discussion, I asked the city manager if he would just comment on those changes that will possibly take place here.
On the request for the funding and what the funding will be for. So this is a relatively small project, which is, as indicated in the information, which is to improve pedestrian safety in the area that was designated, which really involves sidewalks as well as ramps and those types of activities. And Dwayne and Ian, is Dwayne still here? Both are here too, and can talk about any of the specific questions that you might have associated with the project. This is one of those instances where, you know, we do compete for funding to help us do these kinds of projects rather than using just local dollars, and so that's what this action is to actually make that request for funding.
Thank you. All right, council, any discussion from members of council? Okay. Ms. Moon Reynolds.
Thank you. I had asked the manager earlier for a response on a couple of items, and he was kind enough to respond back. One of the things that I was interested in was part of the federal aid agreement, and that piece was with regards to the project shall be initiated and at least a portion of the project's program funds expended within a year of the budgeted year of allocation. And then it went on to say that in the event the project is not advanced to the next phase of construction from the locality,
that it would reimburse the Commonwealth of Virginia, VDOT. So my question was, do we have a time period as to when this construction will start?
Yeah, we do, and Ian and Dwayne provided this with me, so if I get any of this wrong, you guys let me know. So there are 4 years from award to initiate the construction. The design is expected to take about 12 to 18 months, and currently we're about 30% into that design, so that's actually already underway. And then there would be about 2.5 years in order to begin the process and then actually start the construction. So that all should fit well within that time frame that we have available through this.
So it's within the 5 years?
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Okay. That's what I needed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Ms. Carl.
Mr. Mayor, maybe Dwayne or Ian, you could say this. Could you just, for the public's sake, describe where this work's going to take place on Williamson Road?
Yeah, and while they're coming up, if anybody's actually viewing or...
I've got the picture.
Yeah, obviously,
but I can't
so
tell where it
online,
is.
if they access the package, the packet, it'll have the map that shows
Right.
the boundaries of this, but they can certainly explain that so that folks that don't have access to that right now.
So this is the 5100 block of Williamson Road, which is between Woodbury and Hawthorne.
Okay.
So it's the far end of Williamson Road in the city limits.
Thank you.
And as for a, what we call site for public sake, what businesses is near Woodbury and Hawthorne? In what vicinity are you referring to? I'm looking at the picture here, trying to pinpoint what's there.
I'm not sure I can answer that off the top of my head.
It's up there going toward Happy's,
Yes,
on that end.
yes.
Okay, that's Airport Road.
Yes.
I'm just trying to
Past
put it in the
Airport Road.
vicinity.
That's correct.
Thank
That's
you, I
correct.
know where you're at, yeah. Yeah, Coaching 4 for those who want to know for sure. Yes.
All right. Any other questions? Madam Clerk, can you call the roll?
Ms. Sanchez Jones.
Aye.
Vice Mayor White Boyd.
Aye.
Mr. Bestfitch.
Aye.
Mr. Cobb.
Aye.
Ms. Moon Reynolds.
Aye.
Ms. Price.
Aye.
And Mayor Lee.
Aye. And the resolution passes. We now have a budget ordinance.
Move the budget ordinance.
Madam Clerk, can you read the title paragraph?
An ordinance appropriating funding from the Commonwealth of Virginia Department of Transportation, amending and reordaining certain sections of the 2022-2023 Capital Projects Fund appropriations, and dispensing with the second reading by title of this ordinance.
All right, is there any discussion among council? Comments? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll, please.
Ms. Sanchez Jones.
Aye.
Vice Mayor White Boyd.
Aye.
Mr. Bestfitch.
Aye.
Mr. Cobb.
Aye.
Ms. Moon Reynolds.
Aye.
Ms. Price.
Aye.
And Mayor Lee.
Aye, and the budget ordinance passes. Item number C is the acquisition of real property rights associated with the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program. There's an ordinance.
Move the ordinance. Second.
All right, Madam Clerk, could you please read the title paragraph for us?
An ordinance authorizing the acquisition of certain flood-prone property located on Peters Creek Road Northwest for the Hazard Mitigation Program with funds from the Federal Emergency Management Agency, pre-disaster mitigation grants, and flood mitigation assistance grants administered by the Department of Emergency Management upon certain terms and conditions, and dispensing with the second reading of this ordinance.
Thank you. Any questions or comments by members of council?
Mayor, if I may, just to give just a little bit of insight as to what this item deals with. So this particular request relates to our efforts to acquire 6 additional properties, as noted in the agenda packet as to where those are. But it is just the latest of an ongoing effort. It goes back into the 1980s, where the city has secured over $6.3 million, mostly through FEMA, but also some state funds, as well as some local funds, to acquire 118 properties, which are all flood-prone properties. So these are all properties that have repeatedly flooded, have repeatedly made claims against the flood insurance program. Of course, most notably was the recent acquisition of the Ramada Inn, which was acquired by the city and removed from the city, demolished, and is no longer now drawing upon those resources. So this is just a continuation of that effort. And again, 6 different addresses, 6 different properties along Peters Creek Road are the latest in this request.
All right, thank you. Any other discussion by members of council? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Ms. Sanchez Jones.
Aye.
Vice Mayor White Boyd.
Aye.
Mr. Bestfitch.
Aye.
Mr. Cobb.
Aye.
Ms. Moon Reynolds.
Aye.
Ms. Price.
Aye.
Mayor Lee.
Aye. And the ordinance passes. Thank you. Item number D is acquisition of real property rights for stormwater drainage improvement project, the Hollins Liberty Road. There's an ordinance.
Move the ordinance.
Second.
All right, Madam Clerk, can you read the title paragraph, please?
An ordinance providing for the acquisition of real property identified as 2435 Hollins Road Northeast, tax map number 3250303, 2429 Hollins Road Northeast, tax map number 3250302, and 2409 Hollins Road Northeast, tax map number 3250301, needed by the city in connection with the Hollins Liberty Road Stormwater Drainage Improvement Project, authorizing city staff to acquire such property rights by negotiation for the city, authorizing the city manager or his designee to execute appropriate acquisition documents, and dispensing with the second reading of this ordinance by title.
Thank you. Is there any discussion among members of council? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Sanchez Jones.
Aye.
Vice Mayor White Boyd.
Aye.
Mr. Bestfitch.
Aye.
Mr. Cobb.
Aye.
Ms. Moon Reynolds.
Aye.
Ms. Price.
Aye.
And Mayor Lee.
Aye, and the ordinance passes. Thank you. This time, I'm pleased to recognize the city manager for any comments that he may have.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just a few items. Obviously, with the Thanksgiving holiday coming up, solid waste collections will be affected as they are with all holidays. And so folks are encouraged to visit either the website or look on the flyer that has been delivered or other information about what those schedules will look like. We just want to remind everyone of that. Also remind folks, this has already been talked about briefly, that we will have our council budget planning retreat, which will take place on the 29th. It's at Melrose Library, beginning at 8:30. My expectation is it'll probably be 8:30 till 4:30 at the latest, but it'll be a full day with that work as well. Also want to remind folks, and this was in the update that I sent to you all as well, and certainly has already been pushed out publicly, but I want to make sure that folks know, of course, as part of our ongoing efforts to upgrade our parks and recreation facilities, most notably is the replacement of the Eureka Recreation Center. And of course, you all know that a designer has been secured for that work, and they have begun their work. And as a part of that, we're continuing to build on the community engagement that had been done through the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, which ultimately identified this plan. And the next step in that process is actually taking place on Tuesday, December 6th. Beginning at 6 o'clock at the Melrose Library. This is an opportunity for the community actually to come in, share with the designers and with the Parks and Recreation staff their thoughts regarding the replacement for the Eureka Center. So again, that's December 6th at 6 o'clock at the Melrose Library. And that's just the next iteration. There'll be more opportunities as we progress through the design related to that project. Last item I have, I'm going to pass around for you all, if you wouldn't mind. If you would take one of these and then pass it on, and then there's 2 different sets, so I'm going to separate these. This is an effort to build off of part of what you've been getting in my weekly report. Every month we provide to you kind of an overview of the budget and how the budget is working through the course of the year. So you'll get that 4 or 5 page document that shows kind of generically what was budgeted, where we are in relationship to the budget in that period of the year, as well as highlight some projects and stuff. You will actually now, beginning in December, in addition to that, so you'll still continue to get that update, but in addition to that, you will receive in your agenda packet information related to revenues to date by month compared against budget, As well, you'll receive the expenditures by month as well. So that'll be included starting at the December 19th meeting. That'll be included in your packet, and it'll be in there every month. Obviously, it'll be for the month prior, so in December, you'll get November. What I've just passed out to you are the October numbers. Again, that's not replacing what you get in your weekly report, but it'll actually add to that. And, of course, by putting it in the packet, this information is available publicly as well. And so that, just wanted to pass that around so you knew kind of what the format. It may change a bit more as we go through, but generally that's the format that you'll see with it. It will always have expenditures, it will always have revenue, and we'll always have it against where we, all things being equal, where we would be in the year. So we're 33% of the way through the year. You would expect to see revenues in general around 33%, expenses generally around that. Where they deviate, there'll be a note off to the side explaining why. Obviously, in some cases, we only get revenue twice a year, and so obviously you'll see long periods where the numbers are below, then suddenly jump up. So that'll be explained in each of those. And again, you'll receive that each month in your agenda packet as we go forward. So just wanted to highlight that for you, and that concludes my comments, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody got any questions on anything on that? All right, our next item is the city attorney. 2A is an amendment of the city code, chapter 12, fire prevention and protection, by adding Article 4, smoke alarms and section 12-17, violations, Article 2, fire prevention code, to make each day a violation occurs a separate offense. There is an ordinance.
Move the ordinance. Second.
Madam Clerk, could you read the title paragraph, please?
An ordinance amending and reordaining Chapter 12, Fire Prevention and Protection, Section 12-7, violations, and adding a new Article 4, smoke alarms, Code of the City of Roanoke, as amended.
All right, any discussion on members of council? Mr. Cobb.
I just have a question that was passed on to me by a person who owns properties. The question was how this new proposal would work with the requirements we already have in the Tenant Landlord Act. Do they directly align with those, or is there any distinction or difference?
There's a bit of a distinction in that this is going to be under our fire prevention and protection sections, so that it is a little bit different. But please note, based on what was discussed earlier today, if you look through here, you'll see the owner is held more accountable to common areas, which of course the owner of the property would control, and that the tenant, if they disrupt a smoke alarm or disable a smoke alarm within the structure itself, then becomes responsible. But that provides that there has to have been a working smoke detector. So it works with those sections in a sense, but it is a standalone section under our fire and prevention protection code, fire prevention and protection ordinances, and each day is its own violation, and that is to prompt landlords and owners, people who have multifamily properties, to make them safe for the tenants. This is truly about safety, public safety for those residents who reside in our city.
Thank you.
All right, any other discussion? All right, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Sanchez Jones.
Aye.
Vice Mayor White Boyd.
Aye.
Mr. Bestfitch.
Aye.
Mr. Cobb.
Aye.
Ms. Moon Reynolds.
Aye.
Ms. Price.
Aye.
And Mayor Lee.
Aye. And the ordinance passes. Thank you. Item number 8 is reports of committees. A report of the Roanoke City School Board requesting appropriation of funds for various educational programs, and a report of the city manager recommending the council concur in the request. Donna Caldwell is director. Let me thank you guys from the fire department. Thank you. for your presence today. Okay. All right, report of the city manager recommending that council concur in the request. Donna Caldwell, Director of Accounting, is the spokesperson. There's a budget ordinance.
Move the budget ordinance. Second.
All right, Madam Clerk, could you read the title paragraph, please?
An ordinance to appropriate funding from the Commonwealth, federal and private grant for various educational programs, amending and reordaining certain sections of the 2022-2023 school grant fund appropriations, and dispensing with the second reading by title of this ordinance.
All right, is there any discussion, members of council? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Sanchez Jones.
Aye.
Vice Mayor White Boyd.
Aye.
Mr. Bestfitch.
Aye.
Mr. Cobb.
Aye.
Ms. Moon Reynolds.
Aye.
Ms. Price. And Mayor Lee.
Aye, and the budget ordinance passes. Item number 2 is a presentation of the proposed 2022 legislative program, and I'm pleased to recognize Councilmember Bestfitch, who is the chair of our legislative committee. And there's one measure, which is a resolution.
I'll offer a motion to adopt the resolution.
And I second it.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, can you read the title paragraph, please?
A resolution adopting and endorsing the 2023 legislative program for the city to be presented to the city's delegation on the General Assembly, and authorizing the city's legislative liaison to advocate the positions of the city with respect to matters presented during the 2023 session of the General Assembly.
All right, is there any discussion among council members?
Mr. Mayor, let me just say that
Yes, sir. Bestfitch.
Our packet this year got so large that I really didn't want to keep printing hard copies and requiring more trees to be cut down for the paper. So I've emailed it a couple of times to everybody. You should have an electronic format, and actually I emailed it again this afternoon at 2:09. So if you have access to your email right now, you can pull it up if you like. I apologize for my confusion about the Clerk of Circuit Court's position. Essentially, just to make sure everybody's on the same page, what we're doing is putting in a request this year for a budget amendment that would take care of this issue, and then the recommendation from our city attorney and from our partners at Advantis is that I keep saying that you put this on the legislative agenda for a legislative action in 2024 session, and not this upcoming session. So I think everything else we discussed at quite some length as we went through the process, and I appreciate everybody's suggestions and recommendations for the legislative program as we went through. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All right, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Sanchez Jones.
Aye.
Vice Mayor White Boyd.
Aye.
Mr. Bestfitch.
Aye.
Mr. Cobb.
Aye.
Ms. Moon Reynolds.
Aye.
Ms. Price.
Aye.
And Mayor Lee.
Aye, and the resolution passes, and Mr. Bestfitch, we thank you for your work and effort in putting this together, and for all of your years of service in this capacity. So we appreciate that.
And may I just ask that the city manager ask that a copy be put on the website with a news release, so that any citizens that may be interested, just a news release that this is available, and put it right on the website so anybody who wants to look at it
Great.
may find it easily.
Great. Thank you.
And Mayor, I did just have a question for Councilmember Bestfitch. Are we still meeting jointly? I wasn't here at the last meeting, so we are still on point to meet jointly with the area legislators in December?
Yeah, the legislators are being invited to come to the first meeting in December. And since this is now just been adopted by City Council, it's really a council document. So we will not plan to schedule a separate legislative committee meeting that day, but just handle it as a council
Right.
in terms of discussion with the delegation.
Yeah, and I think, just for everybody, I believe the plan right now is December 5th is when that will be, and that's also when we'll do our joint meeting with the airport authority at the airport. But I think right now the intent is to do the meeting with the legislators here first, get all of our business completed here, and then we'll actually relocate to the airport for the rest of that. So.
And that time, is it 9 o'clock? Is it that morning, or are we having the...
That one will be in the morning.
9 o'clock. I just wanted to, for the public's sake, to be clear. Yes, thank you.
And we did have a regional legislative luncheon today, which all of us talked about things that we're doing. I didn't go much detail on this, but we talked about some things that we hope that our legislators need to hear in terms of...
May I just ask you, which legislators were present for that luncheon today from our area?
Delegate Rasul was there. Senator Edwards was not there. And Senator Summerlin was there. And
Delegate Chris Head, was he?
No, he was not there.
Chris Head was not there.
He was not there.
They're the ones that cover the city, so.
Right.
Was Delegate McNamara there?
No, he was not there.
Okay, thank you.
He's a delegate or Senate?
Delegate.
Delegate.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Anybody have any other questions? All right. We're now down to a report of certain authorities, boards, committees, and commissions in which city councils serve as liaisons or appointees. Any comments by council on the boards or committees that you serve on that you'd like to share? All right, hearing none, we'll move down to number 9, which is unfinished business. We have none. Number 10 is introduction and consideration of ordinances and resolution. A resolution appointing Tamara Franco and Kermit Hale as directors of the City of Roanoke Economic Development Authority, commencing October 21st, 2022, and ending October 20th, 2026. There's resolutions.
Move the resolution.
All right, we're going to take with 2 of them. We'll take the first one.
Second.
Okay, thank you. You ready, Madam Clerk?
Yes,
you got that on the first one, and I'll ask you to read the title paragraph.
A resolution appointing a director on the Board of Directors of the Economic Development Authority of the City of Roanoke, Virginia.
Okay. Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
I had occasion to speak with Mr. Hale about another matter, but as we had our conversation, I made sure that he knew that this was coming, and he was extremely appreciative. I just want everybody to know that he really looks forward to serving on this Economic Development Authority, and based on his diligence and conscientious work on the Planning Commission over the last 9 years, I feel confident that he will do a great job. But I just want you to know he was very happy that council had indicated that confidence in him.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. All right, Madam Clerk, could you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Ms. Sanchez Jones.
Aye.
Vice Mayor White Boyd.
Aye.
Mr. Bestfitch.
Aye.
Mr. Cobb.
Aye.
Ms. Moon Reynolds.
Aye.
Ms. Price.
Aye.
Mayor Lee.
Aye. And that first resolution passes. Need a motion on the second resolution.
So move on the resolution to reappoint Kermit Hale.
We just did.
No, the one we just did was, I thought it was Tamara Franco?
No.
Franco? They didn't call out the name, and I just assumed because it was my first sheet. So which one, well, whichever, I'll do the second one.
Okay.
All right. Well, we approved that one. We'll go to the second one, and both of them are going to be approved. So
This one will be for Tamika, since we talked about Mr. Hale for the first.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
do you have
Yes, I have the resolution. I'll read this.
Okay.
A resolution appointing a director on the Board of Directors of the Economic Development Authority of the City of Roanoke, Virginia.
All right. Any discussion? right, Madam Clerk, we can call the roll.
Did we get a second on that? Did we get a second? Did anyone second?
Second.
Okay. And now I will call the roll. Ms. Sanchez Jones?
Aye.
Vice Mayor White Boyd?
Aye.
Mr. Bestfitch?
Aye.
Mr. Cobb?
Aye.
Ms. Moon Reynolds?
Aye.
Ms. Price? And Mayor Lee?
Aye, and the resolution passes. So we'll move now down to item number 11, motion and miscellaneous business. Any inquiry or comments by any members of council? Let me just say I want to thank the city and especially the Recreation Department under the direction of Mr. Clark, Michael Clark, for partnering with the CIAA, which is the Central Intercollegiate Athletic Association. They came here last week, and you know, that consists of about 12 schools. But the volleyball team, they had the CIAA championship volleyball match here last week, and the teams from Elizabeth City, North Carolina, Elizabeth City State University, and Shaw University went over to Eureka Park and met the young ladies over there, and they were really excited. I mean, they brought about 3 or 4 big buses over there. And but I want to thank the work that Michael Clark did and Jeffrey Powell to pull this together, and the commissioner of the conference, Ms. Williams, was there, and it was an enjoyable day. Of course, I took a few photo ops, you know, that's an opportunity to do that with my, my school is in that conference. We didn't get here, unfortunately. Well, yes, we did, but we left quick. The volleyball team came, but they were eliminated first day, so they weren't here. But it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that, and it was so good for the students, and people were there to mingle with those college students and play volleyball and talk about volleyball. So it was a good thing. So I do want to thank the city for partnering with that, and that's a good event. And we hope to have that conference they play several of their championship matches here. Volleyball, the men's and women's long distance running competition, and we had bowling here, didn't come this year, and women's softball championships, and the football championship, which was a very, very good game, pretty good crowd, good weather, and I try to get students from our schools to go out and be ball boys and do those things there, all for them to mingle with those college students. I think that's important, that they can have a chance to meet those students and they talk to them about their experiences and those kinds of things. So I think it's good, and all those schools are HBCU schools, except one, and they played for the championship, Shawan University, and Fayetteville State University won that game, an exciting game, kicked the field goal with 5 seconds. It was 28-28, and they kicked the field goal with 5 seconds. So on one side you had euphoria, they were excited, and on the other side they just dropped their heads, and it was a tough loss, but it was all a good time, and I think it said a lot for Roanoke as they played the game over at that game over at Salem State. Okay, anybody else have any business to take care of? I got something here that give me just a second. I know we got a lot of meetings. I want to make sure. Oh yes, I want to make everybody aware that our esteemed city attorney has been selected to serve on the grants committee of the Opioid Abatement Authority. And that first meeting is this Wednesday, but we very pleased that Tim has been selected to do that. And we talked a little bit about that at the legislative luncheon today. Some cities are talking about opioid and money and those kinds of things. So And I made that statement over there, so you may be getting some calls, Tim, for one way or another. But congratulations and thank you for being at the table. And that's something I think people must really need to understand, that being at the table says something. And you represent Roanoke and this valley, so thank you, and I look forward to great things coming out of that committee.
Thank you, Mayor. And we're having a meeting here in Roanoke, December 1st, over at Blue Ridge Health on Franklin Road at 6:30.
Great.
On December 1st. So.
Congratulations.
Thank you. All right, if that being no more, and no any more business will come before us, we'll stay in recess for our closed meetings, and we'll reconvene at 7:00 p.m.